Good afternoon, I'm John Alderton, the Office Managing Partner at Squire Patton Boggs. I'm delighted to welcome Ben Digby today, who's the International Trade and Investment Director at the CBI. We're going to talk about all things trade related in relation to the Commonwealth. So let's talk trade. Ben, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good to be here.
We'll start with sort of what you would see as the 5 economic trends that are most affecting what we call the Commonwealth countries.
I think one of the things you have to remember is the Commonwealth is a huge organisation, 53 countries, all at different stages of economic development. So I would group them into different categories. You've got the emerging, developing Commonwealth countries, and there I would say technology, urbanisation, the emerging middle class really feel like important trends for UK companies. If you look at a country like India, huge investment in smart cities and urbanisation with lots of opportunity for UK infrastructure providers, but also consultancies and legal services. But if you look then more towards the developed Commonwealth countries, I'd say services opening up. If you look at the trade agreements, traditionally on goods, now looking at services markets opening up much more. And then collaboration around areas like innovation and data as two big trends that we're seeing.
Okay, that was interesting, thank you. And from a UK business point of view, what would you say were the best opportunities in terms of Commonwealth countries?
So I would pick out two main ones. The first I'd say was education and healthcare. If you look at some of the role that our universities are playing in developing countries, in particular in the Commonwealth, and also some of the healthcare provision, you look at some of the technology services around education and health, I think that's really, really interesting. Particularly in Africa, places like India, we're seeing an awful lot of success for British companies. Things that need to be done to make those markets sometimes easier. For example, in education in India, as a higher education services provider, you don't get access to the market. So there are market access issues which prevent us doing even more. The other area I'd mention is infrastructure. Across a number of Commonwealth countries, but particularly in Africa and places like India, you're seeing huge investment in urban infrastructure initiatives, smart cities, some of the things that I've already mentioned around the legal services, the project management, the design, the consultancy. But again, there are real market access issues that we need to unpick. For example, in India, architectural practices can't practice in India. So things that we need to make a bit of a push on.
Yeah. And what would you say is special about the relationship that the UK has with the Commonwealth beyond the obvious historical connections?
Well, there are so many things which are special, and I have to say that I took part in the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting as a CBI representative in London earlier this year, and it just showed you the diversity of that relationship. Obviously there's the history, but it really felt that there was an energy around the future of the relationship. I think obviously language in terms of ease of doing business is something which is there. The legal systems are often quite similar. But I think actually this is a time for us looking at the Commonwealth around trade, not as a replacement for the European Union, but as something which we can look at as being more ambitious and looking at the Commonwealth from a trade perspective in a way that we perhaps haven't in the past. And I think there are huge opportunities for us to do even more stuff around trade facilitation with Commonwealth countries.
Okay. And with your ear to the ground from a Commonwealth point of view, what's the outlook for UK trade agreements with, say, the US, the CPTPP countries, in particular New Zealand and Australia? How would you see that climate?
I think there's a huge amount of enthusiasm. I have to say, last weekend I was at the rugby with the New Zealand High Commission. They want to do a trade deal with us, that's true. So did the Australians, and across the CPTPP countries. In the last 6 weeks I've been in Canada and Japan, and they really want us to be part of that. Yeah. But obviously they're all saying to us, we need to see the relationship that you're having with the European Union to see what's in scope for the deals that we could do with you. Yeah. And actually we think, looking at it, that clearly the European Union remains our most important market. That needs to be prioritised in terms of our future relationship. And the strength of that relationship and its nature will determine whether we actually can sign up to some of these free trade agreements. But the final thing I would say on that is, outside of free trade agreements, there's a huge amount that we can do to improve our trade integration with some of these markets. Lots of different opportunities which don't require a free trade agreement.
And given where we are in the current Brexit negotiations, what do you think the outlook is for UK exports and inward investment performance?
I think on both of those, since the referendum, we've seen a huge amount of resilience. We are still the #1 destination for inward investment in the European Union. our exports have increased. But we are approaching a time now, I think, where both of those things are under a lot more pressure. A recent survey that we did on manufacturing export orders saw the lowest orders for the next 3 months over the last 3 years, so the lowest recorded performance in the last 3 years. And clearly, the prospect of no deal or a deal with the EU which increases frictions is a huge, huge threat to our ability to export to the European Union market. So we're very, very concerned about that, and that's why it's really important that over the next few weeks, the politicians who will be taking the decisions take the most important decision, which is the need to avoid a no deal and get us beyond March and into that transition period.
Ben, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thanks for being with you.